Hey everybody, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to set up a new document in Vectr. So the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and open up a new browser window and you're going to type in vectr.com. And that's going to bring you to the Vectr homepage where you're going to be prompted to use online or log in. So what I actually want you to do is go ahead and click on use online. And that will bring you to the browser window where you can start doing all of your work. So the first thing you're going to see down here, and this is really important, is that this is a temporary file. So anything that you do in here isn't going to save. So make sure you click on sign up if you've never made an account. Go ahead and click on the Google sign in button and you're going to log in with your S207 account. So go ahead and click on that. And then you'll be good to go in Vectr. So what we can do down here is, this is also saying it's a temporary file, so we can go ahead and copy it to our account to make sure it stays there. And I'll show you how you can access that later. So now that we have a new project set up, what we want to do is modify our artboard or modify our project to make sure it has the correct dimensions that we need. So what you're going to do if you're working in Vectr is go over here to Pages, and you'll see down here at the bottom that you have some page settings that you want to modify. Right in here in the center is a link, and as long as that link box is turned on, it means that both your height and your width dimensions are going to be the same, and it's going to make a square. So in this case, we don't want that. We also really want to pay attention to the units that we're working in. So right now, this is defaulting to pixels, and we actually want it in inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually unclick this box to make sure that I have full control over the size of my document. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this first one. And for my width, I'm going to type in 5 inches and press enter. And you might find it's been really glitchy for whatever reason. It continuously goes back to pixels. I was not having this problem before recording the video. But 5 inches translates to 480 pixels in this case. And our height, we're going to try typing in 8 inches. Again, it's trying to default back to pixels, and that's going to be 768 pixels. So in short, you can also just type in 480 pixels for your width and 768 pixels for your height, and then you're going to be good to go. So your goal in working in Vectr is going to be to create 3 different roughs. You're going to have one rough for your line project, one rough for shapes, and one rough for texture. And in doing all of this, you're going to learn how to use the pen tool and how to use the shapes in this program. So you're going to be saving 3 different files. There's a couple different ways you can approach this. Many of you already took screenshots or pictures of the thumbnails you created. You're absolutely more than welcome to import those into Vectr and trace over them. Or if you're not comfortable doing that and you just want to do it freehand and use your initial thumbnail drawings for inspiration, you can do that too. So I'm going to show you how I can upload an image. And I went ahead and I saved my thumbnail sample here on my desktop. And let's say this is the concept that I want to explore further. Notice if I try to rescale it, it's not uniform and I can make it really overly stretched in either direction. We don't want that. So what you can do is if you hold down the Shift key, no matter which direction I pull it, it's going to keep a uniform scale. Now, another thing that you might be noticing is that it's really pixelated, we can't really see it, and that's totally okay, because the purpose of this assignment is to really just use this as a template and as a sketch, and then we're going to be making our shapes over it. So when you're working in Vectr, and you're working on creating these different designs, you are only working in black and white. So there's not going to be any gray, there's not going to be any pink, orange, and blue, you're just working in black and white. So I know right off the bat, there's a couple of things that I can do here. I have a couple of circle tools or circle shapes here. So I can go ahead and use my circle tool. I can also hold down my shift key there to make a nice uniform circle. And I can go ahead and move that around my workspace. Now, this is where you can start to get a bit creative with color, and you can see in my initial design, I didn't do that. So let's say I want this initial circle to be white. I can go over here to my color picker and put in a white circle. I can also select my circle and do Control C to copy and Control V to paste. And I can move that down to other parts of my project where I see circles. You may also decide that you want to actually change the color of these circles and make them all a little bit different. So I can go ahead and select the second circle, again, go up to my color picker and change this down to black. Now, in a lot of these examples, I have another concentric circle inside of it. So I can go back to my circle or my ellipse tool again. I can draw out another circle. Again, I'm holding down the shift key to make that really uniform. And I can drag that to the center. I can also think about changing this color to black so it has a lot of contrast. If you notice here, this actually has a blue border assigned to it, and I don't want that. So I can choose to uncheck border to make sure it just remains a basic shape. Now, I think you probably get the idea of how you can work with different circles. We can also start to talk about how we're going to use backgrounds and how we're going to use our pen tool to really trace out some of these shapes. So you'll notice in Vectr, my pen tool is right over here. I may choose to trace out this oblong shape. And you could go ahead and make different points along the way, but what that's going to do is it's going to result in a really choppy shape. And you probably already experienced that in your pen tool practice. So my recommendation as you're going through this, if you're working with straight lines, practice holding down the shift key to make them nice and straight, or you can go ahead and freehand it too. It's totally up to you. So in this case, I'm going to bring that shape down here. I want to make this curved piece. So as you learn from your pen tool practice, you can practice with these Bezier handles. I can see in this one, I'm going to have to make a little intermediary stop and click and hold, and then bring this down again to complete that curve. Finish out this shape here and then connect it at the end. One thing that I really like to keep in mind when I'm working with the pen tool is I don't always focus on all the details right away. I typically go in and make my basic sketch first, and then I go in and do some different modifications. So for this, I can see that I might want to focus on modifying some of these different parts within here and simplifying the shape. So to modify the shape, what you can do is go ahead and double click on your path here or just hover over it. And what you can do is you'll see these different points come up that you already created. You can see this one right here is a sharp point. It doesn't curve. So I probably want to go and change that to a Bezier curve so I can actually control some of those handles and make it look a little bit better. So I can go ahead and double click on that point, and you'll see that we have these handlebars again that we're becoming more familiar with. If I shrink those handlebars down, it focuses more on the control on that single point, whereas if I make them much larger, I have a much different shape that I'm working with. So I'm going to go ahead and just refine that a little bit. And then I'm also seeing that this point is a little bit off center. So I might decide to pull this over and then also align these just a bit better. So they're snapping there with my corner. If you decide that you maybe missed a point or you want to add a bit more detail, you can also hover over any point along the path to add different points. and modify your shape that way. If you decide that you don't want it to be a Bezier curve, you can just double click it and it'll convert it to a joint. And that's where you're going to have more of your sharper curve. So what you're noticing here is we have a really simple black outline of the shape. Keep in mind, you can always go back over here to some of your options. In this case, I might want to get rid of the border, and I might want to change this to be a black shape. So now what we're working with is a totally different issue. Is we have a shape that's overlapping some of our previous shapes that we created. So a couple different ways that you can fix this is in Vectr, you can move over here to your pages and layers. Remember, we were working on pages before. And you can go over to layers and you can see that this is where we have our path. Every single thing that I've created has been named over here in my layers panel. If you want your path to be behind some of those other two ellipses or circles, you can simply click and hold on the path and you can drag it underneath until you see your other shapes show up. And that's a really good way to keep everything super organized. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, I probably should have thought about the background color or something that I want to do with that, no worries. You can work on using different shapes and your layers to reorganize what that might look like too. So for example, I can go in here and use my rectangle tool and make half of my background, a little more than half of my background, white. So I'll go over here to my background color, change it to white. And we'll see we have the rectangle path that comes up in my layers. I can simply click and drag this all the way behind here. So that's already set and done. Keep in mind, it does interfere with the image behind it. You're more than welcome to move the image above that background as you're working. Or another option that you can try out is clicking on that rectangle path and making sure that actual box that you created is selected. And you'll see over here is the opacity feature, where you can move that opacity from 100% down to something more around 20 to 30%. And what that allows you to do is actually see through the shape. So while the shape is still there, you actually have more of like a piece of tracing paper, so to speak, that you can work with. So I hope this was a helpful introduction to Vectr and how to work with some of these different objects. Really hone in on using some of those pen tool practice techniques that you are practicing before jumping in here. And don't worry about making really, really perfect pieces right now. You're definitely going to go through another round of feedback before submitting your final one. So feel free to make mistakes, get a little messy, experiment, and figure out a design that works best for you. So thank you so much for watching, and please let me know if you have any questions.